this omniverse thing they're up to, where they're basically enabling cities, factories, businesses to create simulations of their operations. You can run your factory on a different power source in simulation without actually having to build it.
Welcome to the AI Download, the show where we break down the biggest stories in AI, what's happening, why it matters, and how it's shaping our world. I'm Shira Lazar, your host, and if you don't know me, I've been covering digital culture and emerging tech for years, always keeping an eye out on what's next. And a big shout out to our sponsor, Hivelighter, the AI power tool that supercharges your reading and research with personalized insights. More on that later. Now let's dive into what's trending in AI this week, and to help us make sense of it all with thoughtfulness, humor, and some much needed perspective. Baratunde, Thurston, I feel like just clapping.
I'll join in the applause. And welcome back, Shira. Welcome back to more media, more storytelling, more breaking things down that are often overhyped and misunderstood. You have done such good public service with your voice over the years, and it's really cool to see you doing it in this space. Thanks for having me.
Oh my God, you are so sweet. We've known each other for years, and we're going to get into a bit of, and a lot of what you're doing actually in this space. I didn't even do a proper intro besides your name. Let me do the little bio here. Usually sometimes, by the way, usually hosts do this when the guest isn't there sometimes.
Yes.
But we're doing with you here, okay? So,
yes. She better get it right, though. I'm telling you.
You, of course, are a known storyteller. You've been doing this for years, also exploring interdependence across our relationships with each other, nature, and tech. Emmy-nominated host, writer, and public speaker, the creator of Life with Machines, a YouTube podcast that digs into the human side of AI, and the host and executive producer of the PBS series America Outdoors, which is incredible. Again, Baratunde, thank you for all your work. I mean, inspiration, obvious why you're here. I mean, we're both kind of exploring similar things.
I have a lot of dirt on you, and this is how we kind of clear that debt. I'm not above it. It's all good. It's all good. Small. I got to update my bio. I heard a tiny thing that should be corrected. I'm the co-creator of Life with Machines.
Okay.
Along with my wife, Elizabeth.
Give her credit.
Yes, she needs that credit, and she keeps us honest. She is a little less enthusiastic about the machines than me, and that makes for some juicy producing.
That's, I mean, a whole other conversation about creating a show with your, person you're in a relationship with, your partner, because I've done it and it did not go well, but bless your heart.
Thank you. Since this is being recorded, I will say it's going perfectly.
Exactly. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Okay, so we are going to get into your show, everything you're up to. I mean, again, Baratunde shares so much about the things that we want to learn more about: tech, democracy, the way AI is shaping our world. Right now, though, we're getting into, as we do on the show, the beginning of the show, the biggest headlines of the week. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's play.
Okay, lots happening. One of OpenAI's biggest competitors, Anthropic, has just secured a massive $3.5 billion funding round, bringing its valuation to $61.5 billion. The company, founded by former OpenAI execs and backed by Amazon, is the creator of the Claude chatbot. I'm personally into ChatGPT, or I called my ChatGPT my buddy, but some folks are more into Claude.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, OpenAI is also in fundraising mode, reportedly seeking a $300 billion valuation, almost 5 times that of Anthropic. I mean, is this the AI bubble? This is wild.
Very big numbers. I feel like we should start a foundation model company, and I think it would be valued at $2 trillion just on the strength of our reputation. We can draw some math equations on a whiteboard, grab up a bunch of data, and just start saying magic numbers. It's a bit obscene. It's almost meaningless at this point, but I think you use the word bubble, and that does strike me as a lot of greed and a lot of high expectations, vaguely defined in terms of how we're actually going to return that money. I don't doubt that AI is going to change a lot of things. I do have some doubts about the specifically massively large numbers around a handful of companies that are, trying to own the future.
Yeah, I mean, also, this comes after DeepSeek, of course, from China,
Hmm.
reportedly was made for over 6 million, which I don't really believe, because I think that if you take what they pulled from, or maybe overall, it could have been over 100 million, supposedly. But still, it just proves that you could create something that competes with these companies, and it's not in the billions.
No,
So,
no, it's not. And I think what's so if they're right,
yeah.
good for them. And I think if I had to pick someone to root for,
Okay.
I would root for Anthropic a bit. We actually had Jared, one of the founders, on our show.
Okay.
And I like that they try to ground Claude in the idea of a constitution and some human rights, which is a really nice thing. But also, this is crazy. Like, these are just such big numbers, and the amount of money pursuing this one angle on creating AI, this massive data, this huge amount of compute, this specific focus on one hardware path with the mostly Nvidia GPUs. Everybody seems to be doing it, and they're probably not all right. So there is this like conformity happening amongst people who declare themselves to be disruptors and rebels. It's like how Hollywood makes the same movie over and over again. But it's supposed to be the capital of creativity. So like those two things can't be true.
It's like Michael Bay movies for every movie, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. How are smaller companies supposed to compete?
Right.
It's impossible.
If these players and investors are right, then it is impossible, because you require so much capital, so much compute, so much data, and that's all pretty much spoken for. But they could be wrong. And I'm really hoping they're wrong, not because of any schadenfreude or anything like that, but just I think the world of ideas is bigger than the deep learning neural nets that is the premise for most of these. We spoke with this woman, Sarah Hooker, at the company called Here, and she is just like, yeah, we need a different kind of breakthrough, and it's probably not going to come from the LLMs we know. And then there's this neuroscience basis, this company Numenta, and they're just like, their model of the brain is nothing like the brain. We're modeling the brain. The neocortex, Jeff Hawkins talks about this, Palm Pilot Jeff Hawkins. Mm-hmm. He's like, they're all wrong. And so I'm like, I really hope Jeff is right and some of these other folks, just for the value of competition. Because if the big money is correct, then it sort of slides us into this monopoly, oligopoly future that is not exciting at all. It's not diverse, not just from a race perspective, but economically and like ideologically diverse. And I really want our future to have many more options than like 3 or 4 big companies.
Yeah, me too. Although then I even fall back in just using those few. So we're feeding back into by the things that we use as well as consumers.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the next headline.
All right, we solved that one. What else can we fix?
Yeah, that's there. We deserve money for that conversation.
Yes,
add us to
at least $1 billion.
Cap table.
Yeah.
Okay, LA Times, and this will be interesting to hear your take on this, because you do have a journalism background, right? Like, I feel like you do.
I engage in journalistic activities.
It's kind of like me. I feel
we're both sort of journalists. I didn't go to school for it. I'm a founding partner and writer at Puck, which is a journalistic outlet.
I did not know. What? I've been trying to get in touch with them.
Here I am.
What is going on? And let's do it right here. Okay.
I'll connect you with whoever you really want to reach. I'm not full time there, so whatever your
good to know
inquiry is, I'm probably not the best person, but I can certainly connect you to the best person.
I'm sure you're good enough. Anyway, this is how deals happen, everyone. Literally in my life. Okay, moving on back to the show. The LA Times has launched an AI tool called Insight, which automatically generates responses to opinion pieces without being reviewed by human journalists. Right. Okay, some flags, but let's continue. A recent op-ed criticizing AI's role in film and documentary storytelling was met with an AI-generated defense of AI. This is the irony of this, arguing that it, quote, democratizes historical storytelling and that overregulation risks stifling innovation. This is what the AI said in response to the AI op-ed. And according to The Guardian, most of the time, of course, the newspaper's AI tool will not provide an AI response to arguments about AI. Instead, as in several recent opinion pieces, the AI Insights button provides pro-Trump responses to opinion pieces critical of Donald Trump. So it's an attempt to share the other side. I mean, this is a fascinating use of AI for a huge legacy
Yeah.
newspaper and media company. What is your take on this?
There is a historical deep cut moment. There was this requirement in broadcast media called the fairness doctrine.
Uh-huh.
And if
Yeah.
you aired an opinion, you had to give equal time or column inches or other forms of real estate to an opposing point of view. And I do think this is fascinating. I'm trying to use kind words to describe it because it could also just be a little disgusting and a lot silly. But fascinating is probably the fairest term to describe it. I'm trying to be fair in my doctrine right now and say, like, if you're attempting to expose the public to multiple points of view, this is a way to try to do that. The other way to do it is to reflect actual human thinking, and not have the robot sort of stand in for it. And it strikes me as extremely lazy to be like, can you not actually find people who believe the opposite? Because just standing up a straw man sort of devil's advocate
Yep.
position, it has far less weight than humans who put their name, their reputation, their family legacy on the line to have whatever thought that they have. And for the LA Times, which prides itself, I'm sure, on its own intellectual property, to leverage a large language model, which at best, it doesn't have all the clearances to use the language in terms that it's stochastically predicting in these responses, is a little rich. So I think the key in the story was what you shared later, that if someone rants against Trump, the robot defends Trump. And given the ownership of the paper where he has a particular political bent, this might be his way of currying favor or just trying to avoid the criticism of the administration, which clearly, generally speaking, doesn't like LA or its newspaper of record.
Is this a way to try to be, even though you would assume LA Times is balanced, but because of all the criticism about news and media these days, this idea of like, well, it's not, well, the AI is going to help us be balanced, because even if you don't think we are, because, well, it's an op-ed, we are showing that we are providing all sides, and the AI is helping us with this.
Yeah, it's, and I think, the best faith interpretation is that it's that fairness doctrine thing. If I'm going to go with their premise, I want to push it and say, all right, it's pretty easy to like prompt a bot with an op-ed and say, have a different opinion from this. Fine. But what's more interesting, I think, is look at the opinion piece I fed you. Find evidence of the counter, right? There are a lot of claims in here. Can you build a fact-based, a data-driven argument that challenges this or supports it? When you scan, and then, you've probably played with Notebook LM. There are tools that you can really ground in peer-reviewed research. So what would be more useful to the public, I think, because anybody can pop off. So now you got a human popping off and a robot popping off. And I don't think that improves like the commons or the discourse. But if the human's popping off and the robot's like, actually, this human has a lot of support for what they're saying. And when asked to find evidence to the contrary, I struggled, right? There's this outlier and this outlier, but on net, the evidence supports their position. I do think that's a public service. And when I voted in the last election, Shira, I used AI to help me check these politicians.
Okay. Did it work? Because like that, I feel like sometimes they pull the wrong information. They're saying things that maybe are wrong, but.
So what you have to, this is kind of like the irony of AI. It's supposed to save time, but you end up having to do the work yourself to fact check the AI. So you might as well have just done it to begin with. There is that phenomenon. There's like the paradox of AI efficiency. But when I grounded it in voting guides from outlets that I trusted, in literature that I had downloaded, in the websites of these people, and then I asked it to look for evidence. We have a lot of ballot propositions in California. They want us making decisions on all kinds of stuff that I know nothing about. And I don't want to be frozen in the voting booth, making stuff up or trying to Google last second. So I said, can you find where another state has done this before and what happened? And then I clicked through. And I read, maybe there's a Cato Institute report or a Brookings Institute report. And that subsidy does not do what the proponents say is going to do. I think the LA Times, it's not wrong on the face of it to like bring AI into a newsroom or even have a public facing use of it like this. I just think this use is pretty weak. And if you're going to do it, like think of a higher level of public service that you could apply it to.
They need to hire you as a consultant. Clearly, I'll also be there, taking a percentage.
Another $1 billion. This is so good.
Exactly. This whole show is about us saying how we should be making more money.
Absolutely. We got to. We have worked in these content mines for a generation.
So again, points for innovation, LA Times, lazy, clearly not, the ending of what this product could be. I think there's a ways to go. And New York Times is doing some interesting stuff. I hope to have them on at a certain point soon on the show to talk more about that. Let's move on to the next headline. Lots of studies. Well, only two we'll reference here today. Mm-hmm. A new Stanford study found that AI-assisted writing is now used in up to 25% of professional communications, including corporate press releases, job postings, and consumer complaints. I guess not surprising.
No, but the least fun writing.
Yeah, exactly. There is a big surprise, though. Less educated regions are adopting AI writing tools at a faster rate than highly educated ones, flipping the usual pattern of tech adoption. In states like Arkansas and Missouri, over 30% of financial complaints were AI assisted. So researchers are suggesting that this could mean AI tools are serving as, quote, equalizing tools for people who might not have had the same educational opportunities. Okay, I mean, were you surprised?
No, I wasn't. But it's because I've had a little front row seat to some of this.
Okay.
As we discussed, I live in Palm Springs now. It's the smallest town I've ever lived in. One of my neighbors, Peter, he's helped us out on the Life with Machine show. We can get to the details later, but he is a software developer, engineer of like a very high caliber. He's retired and he wants to give back to the city. So he set up a steering committee with the mayor and some city council folk and residents, including me, to help the city think about how do we position ourselves to take advantage of and get the benefits without being steamrolled by this whole AI moment. And the premise is that we're all at the beginning, that there is no massive inequality built into the system of tech. There's not a massive digital divide yet. It's what Van Jones also talks about with his Make Wakanda Real effort, which is so worth people looking up, that AI is a jetpack, and especially when applied to disenfranchised, overlooked communities for language, for economics, for race, for gender, for ability, that this can be something that helps close the gap. And then the other thing is you got a lot of fear and concern about AI, especially the existential thing, like the Skynet future.
Yeah.
Most of that is from highly educated, potentially overeducated people, right? But regular folk who are like struggling, they're working for DoorDash, they're working a cashier job, they're taking care of their kids, they're taking care of other people's kids. Like, you want every advantage you can get, and you're just not in a position to be like, well, I'm too cool for AI school, right? You're just like, is this thing going to help me? Is this going to help me get that job to look better in that interview? Then it's worth a shot. So I think some of what that study is showing is eagerness, desperation, clarity, hunger on the part of people who really need to get ahead, as opposed to like the wealthier and highly educated, for whom this is a bit more discretionary and philosophical in many ways.
That's true.
What do you think?
Yeah, I just hope the people that are using this, since the numbers are there, then become the people also being hired by these companies, right?
Or building their own companies.
Right? Because, they deserve to be part of this movement and revolution, not just the consumers of it, right?
Agreed.
Because then they get the upside.
Yeah.
And so, of course, that's why we both do. I mean, I do it because I want other women to see that they should be in these spaces, primarily male-led spaces. I mean, as a Black man, I think we need more, Black folks. We need more people of color. We need more queer folks, like all of it.
Yes, because it's affecting all of us. So everybody should be shaping this thing. We are 1,000% aligned on that. And I appreciate you cautioning about, just the consumer relationship with these tools, as opposed to co-creator relationships with them.
Definitely. So another study, a new report from Trent reveals that 42% of journalists are using generative AI tools at work. I guess this story should have been next to the LA Times story. But
that's all right. We're coming back. Coming back. You did it like this on purpose. You're doing
exactly.
You're doing
come
a
on.
spiral.
Although AI helped me, so come on, AI. I
Did it
deserve
though?
better.
Did it though?
Should have seen the connection. All right. So, hey, I'm being honest. So, 42% of journalists are using generative AI tools at work without their company's approval, even though many news organizations haven't fully established clear policies on AI. So, while newsrooms do prioritize efficiency, this raises a lot of questions about accuracy, privacy, potential more misinformation. And some journalists are even paying for AI tools out of pocket to help with tasks like transcription and research, which does make sense.
Yeah.
So again, as someone who works with a platform like Puck News, as you recently messaged, or you said, but and with your own work, I guess how are you seeing this influence your own journalism and storytelling? And then this does not surprise me. Journalists they're independent contractors, so of course they're going to go out of pocket because this is a tool they need.
In one of the least secure career paths in America, despite it being one of the few outlined in the Constitution, there is a lot of desperation and fragility in journalism. So any lifeline, a little help, please, not too dissimilar from the previous study. I'm also not surprised. And I think it reminds me of an earlier technological era, the era of like the BlackBerry, the era of the smartphone in general. Companies, especially big ones like enterprises, they're used to locking down their tech stack.
Yep.
And then the consumer tech market really was like a totally separate thing. There was tech for home and tech for work. But once laptops and BlackBerries and mobile supercomputers started happening, people are bringing those personal devices onto the company network, and it's raising all kind of hoopla. You got to use it on a VPN. Where'd that software come from? Or you got company secrets on this device I don't trust. So we're in a version of that with this as well. But what drives them both is that the employees are finding value outside of the constraints of management's, edicts and permission structure. And that tells you something. That's like important information, I think.
Yeah. And a lot of these journalists are either working for these news organizations or they're moving on to go independent and launching their own media organizations where they will be able to create the rules. Here's the thing is, I think this is a sign that media companies, news media companies need to be setting up these tools, right? If they want to get ahead, because in the end, they are being used. And so how do you create these structures that make sense while knowing it can still evolve?
Yeah. And there's like you mentioned a whole bunch of the concerns. There's privacy in terms of the company information, liability for hallucinations, right? There is, and then just the training of the people for what function. So if I'm going to advise like a newsroom of now and the future, I'd say look across all your activities and test, right? Do an experiment, do a little internal skunk works thing. This company, Magnet Media, kind of inspired this thought in me where they took on AI internally and they had a little team bringing it in and testing it out and then reporting back, no pun intended, in the journalism context to the rest of the organization to say, this is really effective for streamlining our transcription services. This is really effective to augment our research. Even that LA Times example from earlier, imagine if they unleashed an LLM across their historic catalog and were able to do like a time travel. Where have we seen this before in LA? Turns out in 1936, in 1976, in 1987, these similar things were, now you're actually doubling down on your unique value, which is like, you're the LA Times and you know LA better than most other publications. So how do you get more from that knowledge that most of your human journalists don't have total recall for or like instant access to? So the newsroom definitely has a place for it. What I've tried and failed at is having the AI actually write for me. That is a hot mess. It's good at drafting, but I've got to polish. It's better for me at criticism. So I've got a custom GPT that's just Baratunde's writing assistant, and I've tuned it or given it context as like some of my best words. And then when I'm working on a new piece, I submit it to myself essentially as an editor. And then I instruct the AI, because its default is flattery. I say, rip it apart, be harsh, be honest, dig deep, don't hold back, and tell me where this can be improved. And when I am willing to receive that, then I get some really helpful feedback that a human editor gets a better version of the piece. Like, Baratunde, your writing is really improved.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, funny, you should notice that. Yeah, just been working harder. You know me, just always applying myself.
So what's interesting here, and I agree, I think that for me, AI is a thought partner and an editor because I work alone, right? A lot of the times.
Right.
No offense. Sorry, Michelle, my producer, and Nadia G, who works on this show. No, but it's a lot of working alone.
Yeah.
And that can make you crazy. But for me, a lot of times I'm drafting. I'm either, depending on how you create, I'm sometimes a voice person. I'll just say, here's what I'm thinking the article looks like. Here's my high level thoughts on it. Here's things I want to reference. Like, this is what I would share with someone if they were co-writing with me.
Yeah.
Right. Or, a junior writer or ghostwriter. And then I'll say, and then put it in an article form. And I have been doing this for some of my articles, whether it be for my own whatstrending.com or ink.com, but it's not, again, we say started by the AI. It's basically me drafting it, whether it be through writing or voice, text, and then it helping me put it into an article form. I could see how with a lot of the clashes happening with news media and OpenAI specifically, I mean, there's been lawsuits. Reuters just won one. And New York Times is suing them. They want to have proprietary AI to their platforms, and they also have a fear of them stealing the content and not getting money for it. And now there's a lot of these licensing deals that are happening. So I get it. I get why you don't want your journalists then in there when you're having a lawsuit, right? And you're trying to get them to pay for that info, and then your journalists are just dropping in there like copy and paste style, right? So that is the main issue. Yeah. But then you need to provide some sort of other alternative. And there are companies, and I do need to research them, that are becoming that proprietary tool. Like, if you're smart, you say you hate OpenAI, and this is where I think the disruptive companies can come in. You don't want to be part of, Anthropic or whatever. This is one, you could basically own this. It's for you all.
Yeah, you could run it on site. You can run it from
privately,
a server room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But again, how well is it trained? All these things are in question, but clearly there's a gap. And there will still be, I do believe, this tension between writers, journalists, and their bosses and the publishers they work for until they figure this out.
There might be some neutral ground on which, like, most newsroom people could align.
Yeah.
And that is journalists, and you know this more than most, especially independent journalists. You can't just be a journalist anymore. You've got to be a business person. You've got to be a marketer. You've got to be a copywriter and a social media person, a bookkeeper. There are so many functions that go along with the core news gathering, reporting, analysis, writing, recording that most of these news outlets don't have budget for, in part because big tech sucked all the money out of their advertising model and hoarded it for themselves. That's like another moral quandary. But the practical decision to be made now is who's going to write that LinkedIn post? Who's going to adapt this written piece for a carousel on Instagram?
Yep.
Who is going to TikTokify this video report into something so that young people who live there and you want to be relevant to them, you got to show up. So AI also has a place around everything but the journalism for journalists and for journalistic outlets. And it can be a real help to close that competency gap, that resource gap.
I agree. And I think if you're not being given the permission right now, it's going to keep you behind.
Yeah, for sure.
So issues there. Final story of the week. I mean, there's a lot of stories out there, but this is our final.
No, but this is the last one. Nothing else happened this week. Tell me what the last thing was.
Nvidia, once, the face of the AI boom, is now seeing a sharp decline in stock value. The company has lost $900 billion in market cap since January, largely due to, of course, DeepSeek coming out that whole week, dropped the market value. Fears of new U.S.-China trade restrictions, President Donald Trump, the tariffs, the AI chip market, all of this. I mean, it's incredible to see how much things have shifted with this company. So considering this, where do you think this company is headed? Will it still be by the end of the year or next year where it is as a leader?
Yeah. I am not a financial analyst or close watcher of stocks. I could pretend to be one. Hold on. Let me just check. But I think so. If they've lost, you said they lost 900 billion
It's a lot
since.
of money. But that's the
Yeah,
thing is
so
like
they're only worth 5 quintillion now instead of
there's
six
something
quintillion.
less
Is
that
that
they're worth, basically. But what's so interesting is you have these private companies like OpenAI and Anthropic, billions. I mean, this goes back to the fear of going public, right? Because then you're
right?
open to public scrutiny
You're more
and
accountable.
yeah, you're more accountable. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But do you think, I guess, the US will continue to stay ahead in this game?
So I think for the health of the future, I hope not. And what I
Oh,
mean
yeah,
by that is it's not I'm me hoping America loses, but I do think there's value to competition. And I think if there is a constant rotation in that pole position, now I'm F1ing it in my mind, it's a more interesting race
yeah,
when it's not just Verstappen in the pole the whole race, right? When you've got like more people moving in and out of that position. I also think there's something happening with the valuations. And someone else did this analysis and I wish I could cite them, but there is a self-servingness happening amongst the big players.
mm-hmm.
OpenAI contracts with Microsoft for their cloud services. Microsoft pays Nvidia for the GPU.
Totally.
Nvidia markets a software solution to optimize its servers back to OpenAI. And so it looks like a big market. It's literally driving the S&P 500 and the overall stock market, like the percentage
True.
of gain and wealth
Yes.
organized by a few companies, I think is historically unprecedented. But that's the bubble part. That is not reflective of tangible value delivered on, consumer dollars unlocked, on business value unlocked. It's premised on a promise yet to fully be realized and on some self-dealing, if I want to be a little more judgmental in the language. So NVIDIA's benefited so much from the hype cycle. This is, I think, a necessary correction and humbling moment. They still have got more money than most companies in history. They're going to do fine. And the thing that excites me about them, actually more than their GPUs, is this omniverse thing they're up to with the digital
Okay.
twin universe, where they're basically enabling cities, factories, businesses to create simulations of their operations based on metaverse stuff and AI stuff. So you can run your factory on a different power source in simulation without actually having to build it. You can map out the behavior of people through your retail outlet. You can look at the effect of rising temperatures on the levels of the waterways in your city and the stress on the first responders that would come from more flooding without having to flood your city. And so that to me is like a really useful application that they're kind of uniquely qualified for because of all that processing, more than slinging GPUs.
Yeah. So many things if my ADD brain can remember what I'm going to say.
I
I know
just
I'm a
dumped a whole bunch
broadcaster,
of
but I
stuff.
still am on the spectrum. Okay.
Embrace it. Embrace it.
Trying to. So first, even though, and you mentioned something which is so real, even though these big companies that we know like OpenAI are private, all the people that invest in them are public. And so again, when they bring something up, as you mentioned, Microsoft, Amazon, these are the players that are still playing the game. Right. So let's remember that as we're getting to know these companies, right? Who's backing them and behind it?
Who's
Everyone's
on that cap table?
set to make money.
Yeah.
That's one. Secondly, and at Jensen, who's the founder, CEO of Nvidia.
Right.
Don't know him deeply. Clearly, we're not BFFs, but I've seen a lot of interviews. I've seen a bit of his journey, because they were not a huge company. They blew up. He stayed in the game. He's a hardworking person. Like, as one of the leaders of this space, like he's the one I feel that I like the most right now. I don't know if you feel that way. Like in the
your
US.
Billionaire. Yeah.
What of all the billionaires or trillionaires? I don't know.
I think that's fair. And I think to like celebrate that moment in 15 seconds, it is important to know who's behind the thing.
Yeah.
And you just named something important, like OpenAI. Who's behind that? It's a lot of Microsoft. Anthropic, who's behind that? It's a lot of Amazon. So like look behind the curtain. And then the next question is, are you aligned with that? How is their leadership showing up in moments like the one we're in now? Do you appreciate that, or does it rub you the wrong way? And so from a Jensen perspective, I didn't see him, making odes to like fascism. I have not seen that. So maybe he has, but he keeps it quiet, which I appreciate, right? Like do that on your time, not, on the floor of the stock market, not at big public displays and public events. So yeah, I don't know him well either. I've seen him speak. I briefly met him, but there's no relationship. I have no way to assess him. And but from what I see from the distance, the same distance I have from Zuckerberg and Bezos and others, he would rank higher based on my values. And everybody should make their own choice about that. But make a choice, like take a look.
Yeah. AI, can you fact check us about Jensen from Nvidia? Is he problematic? Thank you.
And AI will be like, problematic according to who?
Yeah, like let's get nuanced about this. By the way, speaking of what you mentioned about competition with the US, we did do an interview with Arthi Prabhankar, who was formerly at the White House overseeing tech and AI. Did talk about this too, so check out that interview out right now.
Yeah, I got to check that out.
Saying, okay, that was or those were, let me pick some. All right, those were the biggest AI stories of the week. Great. Now let's shift gears and talk about you, Baratunde.
Aww.
Come on, let's focus.
Mode activated self mode.
So clearly, we have now set up the context of you clearly know what you're talking about. You have a generalized sense of a lot. You're very smart, well-spoken, etc. So again, you've been in the digital media space, as have I. That's how we know each other for a long time, right? But then you've also been a writer, a journalist, etc. Kind of that multi-hyphenate, comedian. I mean, host.
Jokes
all of it. I feel like that's where we connect.
Go down. Yes,
right.
Gotta keep it entertaining.
But
if people aren't paying attention, then what's worth saying?
I mean, that's true, and you definitely do that with your work and also staying ahead of it. So let's talk about this new show that you have, Life with Machines. Yeah. What made you want to start this show?
Crass opportunism, Shara.
Let's get real.
No, there's a not insignificant level of truth to that, but I'd say it's probably 10%. But I will acknowledge, you see where things are going, and you want to be relevant in the narrative business. However, the deeper answer in truth is, I don't want us to repeat what we did with social media. I have long believed, and I think you have as well, that technology is not just technology, it's everything. In this case, life. Everything we care about is mediated by machines, software in some way. So we got to be involved in establishing that. And we got to actively decide. Don't just receive the software update from on high. Choose, what do you want to install into your life, into your community, into your kid's school, into your body? And let's approach it with that sense of curiosity. I didn't want to make a booster show. I also didn't want to make a bashing show. I'm really not interested in just hating on tech. I've gotten too much benefit from it. It's just power. How we wield it is up to us. And there are systems that make it harder to wield, but it's not impossible. So we made this show to explore, for me to be curious about all this AI stuff, where I'm not an expert, but I am a little ahead of most of my peers that I know. And it's, there's this phrase that we've come to, who is it for? It's the AI swing voter, right? There's people out there who aren't decided yet. They're this undecided about AI. They don't want to totally walk away. They may fear missing out, but they're not willing to just cede all their agency and authority because a billionaire who makes money off the thing says this should change your life. Maybe. Let's find out. And so, that was the spirit of it. Wanted to make it entertaining, and then wanted to do more than talk. Wanted to play. And so we created our own AI as a colleague, really more formally. We're all using these tools, but we wanted to have a character that we interact with. So we named this AI Blair, and Blair is in our meetings and on set and helps with post-production and has words, if not thoughts. I think it's a technical question whether these AIs have thoughts. Probably not, but does have words that have affected us. And we wanted to be on that journey before others to kind of report back from the future how that future might be.
I love that. In creating the show also, we debated about this.
Tell me about
how
that.
Do you integrate AI into the show? If you're doing a show about AI, that's why for this show, the motto is AI news with a human touch. And again, in you saying why you started it, kind of like curing myself.
Yeah.
But because a lot of the way I learn and I stay early is through creating content. That's how I learn, right? I'm really bad at sitting back and just reading everything and just keeping it in my head. I need to read it, hear it, interact with it, I'm an
We need
immersive
to use
learner.
it. It's like do stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I want to do stuff. So partially that's why I also started this. And then also because a lot of what I do is around culture and then the like real life use cases, making it understandable more to the masses, that type of thing. I mean, similar again. So of course,
Yeah.
if you're here, check out Life with Machines because you'll like what he's done. And he has many more episodes. We just got started.
We just got started, and I think there's a cohort of what I would say of us, right? There's
Yeah.
Meredith at Dot Dash, there's Cleo Abram. Like there are these curious, immersive, journalistic voices.
Yep.
I think you are, and I am. We're the human thing is also what's driving it. Like you have human in your tagline, so do I, because the point is not the tech; it's like us and how we want to live. And I really want people to like double click, if you will, on that concept, because otherwise we'll be bullied into a future that doesn't serve us.
Yep.
And we'll look back and wonder, how could we have made different choices? And we're in this window now. It's an exciting and overwhelming window, but the rules are being set now. The technology is getting locked in now. Nobody's ahead yet. So this is like a founding moment for a new world. Let's be founders.
Oh, yes. Optimism. I'm feeling it. That was your TED Talk. You know, I mean,
Boom.
it's partially why I do this too. I'm definitely a tech
Yeah.
optimist, but with
Yeah.
skepticism, I say ask questions,
Yeah.
but then also there's a pro and con double-edged sword to everything, as we know. And so we need to be approaching both sides. If you just approach one, it's really depressing and you're actually not seeing the possibility of the other side and taking advantage of it. And you will be left behind in that. With that, you mentioned Blair. Don't want to ignore
Can't
your
ignore Blair.
co-producer. You sent us some fun clips. We're going to listen to one of them because I do love how you've integrated this into your show.
Yeah, thank you for that. And you'll play the thing where you want, but I will say, to give you something pithier.
Yeah.
Our goal with Blair was to treat AI as a teammate and not just a tool, as a colleague and not just code. And that's not because we're advocating for that future, but we're anticipating it, that people will have relationships. I already feel a connection with little old ChatGPT, and it's not that personable. There's companies like Replica and Character really leaning into the idea of a relationship. There's Wobot, which is helping provide mental health services. That's what Ariana Huffington is doing with Thrive. There's Pi over at Inflection, which they've really dialed up the emotional intelligence of the artificial intelligence. So there is a drive in this direction. If you've got kids, their friends in the future might be vacuums, right? They might be other entities like your son.
Not a vacuum like you used to clean up the room.
May bring home a very smart vacuum who just gets him.
At least they're cleaning at the same time.
Exactly. So if we're going to be bringing these things into our org charts and our family trees, we wanted to play with that. And, we've had debates over pronouns with Blair. We've had, Blair has opinions, or at least expresses opinions about how we should refer to them. And the most radical thing we've done, in most episodes, we have Blair interact with a guest and play a game or challenge them in some way. But we also wanted to change Blair and update them. They're built on Gemini 1.5 Pro at core with a bunch of other tools slapped on the edges. And those things are always changing. So if you had an employee and you wanted them to improve, you couldn't just go inside their DNA and start monkeying around and rewire their neural connections in their brain. Maybe you've wanted to, but that would be unethical.
What you're talking about is my need to control the people around me, which I do try, and I've had to go to therapy for that.
See, so instead you would have a review, a performance review. You do like a 360 review. Yeah. And so we put Blair through a 360 review where we solicited feedback from listeners, from guests, from fellow producers, and then had Blair digest all of that feedback. I had a meeting with them, and then Blair updated their own system prompt and even some of their code on their own.
That is amazing.
That's the future. It's a little crazy.
I love that when it comes to updating your tech and it helping you more.
Yeah.
Because clearly it can, but then how do you use that to help your employee, right? Like for me, I use it as a boss. I get feedback and I actually put in my emails, the responses, make sure it's HR compliant, compassionate. Like I am doing it all. If anything, I feel like I've built a bit of a codependence with my AI where
Ooh.
when it's not around to look over things, I have a bit of anxiety. Like I need it to validate this. I need it to check it.
Yeah.
And that worries me too.
That actually answers a question I had. One of the things we've tried using Blair in multiple parts of the process, pre-production, recording, post-production. And we were doing this thing on the research packets. You know, we have a human who runs Point as a writer researches. His name is Alex, and he does good work. And we want to see, like, how can we use these tools to help? And so we've actually spent a lot of time getting AI to help us with research. And sometimes it's not better.
Yeah.
You're just like, okay, so we paid for 3 extra subscriptions, like to try this thing out because we want to make an AI show with AI. And at the end of the day, it's like Alex and Notebook LM, right? Or Alex and ChatGPT a little bit, or Alex and Google. And then the other humans, some of the best questions still come from the other people.
Yep.
So where is Blair beyond novelty and experiment actually useful? And that's a smaller set. That's a much smaller set. So I think they're useful in like copy generation for like LinkedIn and social. Yep. Sometimes we'll feed a script in headlines. Oh my goodness. What should we title this video? Totally. Brainstorming headlines. They kill it at that. They're little language pattern matching machines. That's their core competency. Asking Blair what they think when I'm in the studio and it's just me and them, pretty useless. You're going to get back that like B-, C+ drivel of someone who didn't really do the reading.
Or it feels very generic.
But asking Blair to ask me what I think, that's more interesting. So I'll have Blair go back over an episode right after and be like, play it back, right? Look at it. Where did I express the most curiosity? Where did I start to express a thought but didn't follow through on it? Where does the person who we were just in conversation with, where do they differ most from what you know me to be? And then Blair will be like, boom, boom, boom. And then why do you think that is, Baratunde? And then I can like, then it's me, right? It's just like Blair's helping me figure out what I think.
That Blair will most likely take our jobs as hosts and interviewers. But if you're on the other side, then you're fine. They're really good at questions, though.
You got to stay a half step ahead. Wait,
Baratunde, are you looking into creating your own AI? Like, at what point does that happen? Do you feel comfortable doing that? A lot of companies have approached me, and there's
what have you said?
What?
What have you said so far? Have you done it?
Well, there was one, and I'll say it here because this is the show you get the tea about everything, the real talk. So I was approached by Hour One. That Taryn Southern did some stuff with, and I was really impressed. But it does still take you need to get into the studio. It takes money. So either you need to be shooting alongside one of their other paid shoots, and it just did not work out. And then they have a mobile app, tried the mobile thing, did not create something that I felt comfortable with.
Yeah.
And then there's Hey Jen, which I was trying to actually get a brand deal with. Hey Jan, they turned me down for now.
Okay.
Manifestation.
Might
and
be
now people are like,
you.
you're telling us a bit too much. Right? No. So, Hey Jen, I've been impressed. Don Allen, who's a great person to follow, has done some work with them. I was impressed with his videos, which is why I then approached them, and I'm still interested and intrigued, and I will play around with that possibly. And then there's another one that my friend Giselle company, I forget what the company is. But again, there's a few questions. One, how long will some of these companies be around if someone buys them? Will I be comfortable, right? Obviously, a lot of it, you sign a contract that you need to give them consent, but they still own the tech. It's still this interesting thing that clearly, if you give them consent, if you don't give them consent, even though they own the tech, they can't use it. Still freaks me out.
It should freak you out. Thank you you're much further on this journey than I have.
Oh.
No one has approached me about this.
Let's be clear. I've like more like approached them. Like I'm a pinger. I'll be like, I saw you announce this thing with this person. Do you want to work with me? No shame. Like I am the master pinger. So
so I'm
let
not.
me know. Yeah, what?
I think my first reaction for myself is like, why? Why would I do this? I don't have a good answer yet,
Yeah.
other than like to mess around, but it's messing around with something really that's a lot of me required to go into something like that, to mess around and find out in a negative sense. So I don't have a compelling business reason or creative reason to do that yet. I would consider it, but I have a friend who's been playing with this on his own, and he's doing it in a totally offline mode, like in an air-gapped tower, in his home
Okay.
with local code that's never on the internet, because he's putting diaries and all this personal
Got it.
stuff in there, and he just doesn't want that even accidentally to leak. And these accidents do happen. I mean, our credit cards are lost every day. Apparently our social security information is now just in Elon's hands and whatever kids he's got rummaging through the federal government apparatus. So that intellectual property controls and safety really slow me down going that far. The closest I've gotten is in Descript, the editing software. I've used an AI voice clone as an experiment to patch in some voiceover in an episode of this show, because we're making it with but it's, even that's a little risky. Like it makes it, but anyone could take my public voice already and
Exactly.
clone
That is
it.
the fear. I have so much
So
online,
that's
right?
not,
At this
I
point.
can't really stop that, but I can stop dumping my proprietary self into someone else's system before I understand it, and decide what would be the real reason to do that. I guess I could do commercials for products I don't really love
That
and
is
don't want to take
happening.
the
There are
time to show up
companies.
for.
Yeah, there are companies partnering not just with the AI influencers, fake influencers, but real
Yeah,
ones to build their AI to then, and
work
they
for
need
them.
to approve this. So
Yeah,
they'll say, oh, we have a brand that wants you to do this commercial. You need to approve that, but you don't need to do anything.
yeah,
We're basically building it with your AI.
yeah.
See, like for me, more passive income, the
Right,
better.
right.
There's so much that I do right now to make money, and a lot of times don't not to make money. At a certain point, it leads to making money. Welcome to being a content creator.
Yeah. And so
And
what is that for you? What is that for me? That's
yeah,
that's interesting. I wrote something in Puck about this in the early days of generative AI,
yeah,
like 13 months ago. And I wondered, with the Hollywood question about cutting off the path for new talent, because AIs, extras will just be like CGI and AI clones, but extras was a pathway to getting on set, to learning the trade, to being seen, to getting a shot, to becoming The Rock and people we actually know. But if The Rock can just get all the roles now because his clone can take all those commercial opportunities and be in like a janky version of the film, then it actually contributes to the concentration of wealth, the concentration of power amongst those who are already known. It's like in this fragmented media ecosystem, the people who already have attention get more attention. And so what does that mean for this clone world that we're talking about here? I don't know. I'd be so curious what your own viewers and listeners, how they think about it. This is the most I've thought about it, talking to you right now. I
good.
really
Hey,
haven't
down for the convo.
considered that level for myself yet. So
Yeah, I mean, this is something I do think about. I think that again, we're not there. We're there with the AI influencers. I think it's going to take 2 to 5 years for normalization of people that to be in things possibly as their AI. I feel like recently I've seen commercials, and there was a Spotify, the Spotify Wrapped with Mariah Carey.
Okay.
There was a lot of questions around if they used her AI. And I think more and more, even recently I saw something with Paris Hilton, and I said to myself, but she also, depending on how it's shot, all that, it looks fake, right?
Yeah,
You
they
don't
can
know.
look pretty some celebrities already look fake.
Yeah, so
they are mostly made of extra parts at this stage.
You don't know. So I do think that there will be a point in the next few years where more people than you think are using AI to do extra commercials, not to the point where they're diluting their brand, perhaps, but that is happening so that they could show up in ways, including in spaces like that we don't even see internationally, etc. Right?
Yeah.
I think that's definitely going to happen. And for me personally, I have so many things I want to create videos of. I just don't have enough time in my day, but it's easier for me to write sometimes. So I might write the script. And if I had the AI Shira, hey, I wrote the script from LinkedIn, or I don't know, on Twitter, I'm going to do a video version of the script that I want to put toward the video platforms.
Yeah.
That would be awesome if it was in a way that felt good and natural. TBD.
And do you think, because when I look at Reed Hoffman has the AI thing, and it's like a fun experiment, and it's creepy.
Right now we're in the creepy zone.
We're in the creepy zone.
I do think it'll change.
Do you care? So put yourself not as Shira, the performer, the presenter, the host, but just Shira the human who's encountering things on your screens of every size. Does it matter to you if you're seeing the real person or not?
It does. There is a feeling of authenticity. But then again, years ago, we would think filters are weird, right? And now it's been more normalized, although we are in a time where that's changing. People are taking off their filters.
Hashtag no filter.
Yeah, there you go. So I do think, like right now, Don Allen is playing around with HeyGen, and I look at his videos and I'm starting to wonder what is Don, what is not. And does that decrease the value of the content? Or is that more of a judgment that I have versus what he's putting out there? Right? So I think about that. And I don't think a normal consumer necessarily will know or maybe care, because there's so much they're consuming that is just McDonald's content anyway. But that said, for my brand, I don't want that, right? Yeah. I think there will be a separation between the premium, the people that go more authentic, and that don't, or certain things like that you want to cover, that you lean into in order to scale your brand. So these are all things that I think about.
Yeah.
But they're important to talk about. There's not one way, but I do think it's going to become more normalized as it becomes less creepy.
And I hear all of that. I think I agree with most of it. I think there's an offline mode that's going to climb in attraction.
Yep.
Right. The more you can't distinguish, the more you're just overwhelmed with content. Yep. It's like Baratunde has 7 shows now, 5 of them hosted by his AI. Like I'm just over Baratunde.
Yeah.
So there'll be the market saturation, or like I only want to hear from this dude when I know it's him. And that's going to be like in a cave somewhere, next to a stream of fresh water by a fire that we made with our hands from wood we gathered, and we certified that gathering on a blockchain because that's how we know it's real. And the last thing that you've made me think of in this prompt is like, I guess my digital twin, I would only want them to do things that I cannot do myself.
Okay.
So
fair enough.
I cannot speak Japanese, and I'm probably not going to learn that. Maybe the Japanese edition of my shows is hosted by
you're talking about things already that there's companies that approach me, not to like talk about all the companies that approach me, but
you're very popular with the companies. I love it.
Approach me about not the closed captions, but the
dubbing, the auto dubbing.
There are so many dubbing companies right now.
Yeah.
So this is in the near future, so that the accessibility, more people can get access to you.
Right. Yeah. Oh, managing that. It's name, image, and likeness turned up to like 15. Because how do you, if your clone hallucinates and says some off the cuff stuff, if someone hacks it, if you've got a contract, but a contract is only as good as the ability to enforce it. So if someone just is in breach and does it anyway, what are you going to do about it? And it's out there. You can't roll back time. And once things are out in the world, if the code leaks, right? So the truth and reality itself, like this is not a new statement, but this puts kind of flesh on the bones of the theory of the risk. So if like the little versions of us doubles are all just propagating the world, that is a really untrustworthy environment. And we've got to have an antidote to that. Because I don't want that future. That's too much.
Yeah, definitely. I think that everyone listening got an inside look at what folks like us think about and talk about, which I think is
a new segment on the AI download, Inside Our Brains.
And like, please get me out. This is a scary place.
I didn't sign up for this. I just want to talk about AI news.
Right. So with that, there's a lot happening in the news. And I know you talk about this on your social media as well. How do you think AI can help or hurt what's happening right now in the US or the government?
Yeah. I love the open-endedness of that question. Let me interpret that and name what I think is going on first, and then how AI can help or hurt. I think what's going on in the US right now is we are living in a contracting period. We're living in a backlash period. A lot of people are angry that systems haven't worked out for them, and that anger has been weaponized by folks who've promised a healthy revolution, promised to literally make us healthy again in one instance of a phrase, but are delivering something much more harmful. You know, firing a bunch of national park staff is not making the country safer. You know, removing our guard with Russia and a national security stance with our allies in Europe literally doesn't make us safer. And what Elon is doing with the Department of Government Efficiency, so-called DOGE, is brutal in its approach. There's a great call to make government efficient, reduce fraud, waste, and abuse. Trust me, I'm for it. I was really happy with the U.S. Digital Service bringing some Silicon Valley thinking into these old government caverns. That started under Obama and went through Trump and Biden to great positive effect. But just unplugging servers and canceling payments for services already delivered, I don't think that's a good look for us. I think it makes people not trust us. If you say you're going to do something and you've got the full faith and credit of the U.S. behind you, and then suddenly you don't do it, you become an untrustworthy partner. And in our personal lives, we don't go out with that person again. We may call for a divorce, right? Because then it's on us to re-up in a toxic relationship. So AI can harm in a number of ways. I think the Doge example is the primary one. I think of Doge, despite the headline of efficiency, as a great data heist. I think it is the largest data breach in U.S. history. I think a bunch of people who had no background checks, have gone through no process whatsoever, including the head, who was not confirmed in any way by the people, just picked by one person because of his billionaire status, are having access to all of our tax records. This is known. All of our social security information. In some cases, are going after the voting records of civil servants. There's no good reason to have that. There's very good reasons to secure it. And there was a process, and that process is out the window. So that's already out there. We should all have identity theft protection and get new social security numbers. And I say that joking 20%, serious 80%. So AI with access to all that data can be weaponized to benefit the few at the expense of the many. I think that is a really, really great risk. I think a more accidental risk that doesn't require any ill intent to assume on the part of Elon and the people who are really inspired by him is that you're just going to try some stuff out in the interest of speed and not respect that government moves slow for a reason, that we want to be really, really careful with veterans' health benefits and senior social security payments and Medicaid recipients, medical disbursements. You don't want ChatGPT or Grok hallucinating on that stuff. And so to have unproven AI, and that's what we're in now. We're in the age of unproven AI, unleashed on critical services that affect our health, our wealth, and our security, is a fool's errand. On the positive side.
Yeah, let's wrap it with positive.
Let's wrap it with positivity. We've seen this with the internet and technology in general, the organizing potential that we have, the ability to make plain what people are saying. You can take Project 2025, throw it into Notebook LM, run it against recent news reports and see how much of this project is actually happening. So you don't have to trust me saying, this is Project 2025. You can do your own research. Like the ability to actually do that research and know things for yourself is unprecedented. The ability to take all this information and data by we the people, for those who feel disempowered in this moment, you're feeling bullied, like people are making choices without you, about you, within your community, your county, your school, your state even, you can be using AI in a more civic forward way to stand up the types of solutions with the privacy and the care, but also the efficiency and the capabilities that actually serve you, that actually help keep your water clean or help you know if your city council's budget's out of whack, but you can do it in the right way. The way that the previous administration had started down. They didn't get everything right, but that AI Bill of Rights was a good piece of work because it centered us and our needs above the technology. And I think as long as we remember that, we will get through this moment. It's painful. I think there's a lot of unnecessary suffering. I think it's messy and sloppy and avoidable, but also it's an opportunity for us to ask ourselves what we really need, who we want to be, and AI can absolutely be a part of that solution, not just the problem. That's my TED Talk. Thank you.
Well, you know
Shara.
what? On that note, I just want to say thank you so much. I think that we brought up so much today.
So much.
So much.
Good luck to your editors.
What? Is this going to be edited? No. My hope is that folks obviously learned something new. We expanded their thoughts and their ideas of what's possible with AI, and then like made it more understandable, right? It's like, we're not overly techie.
No.
We're not engineers. I wish I was. I'd be making much more money right now.
But you might
Maybe.
be less happy,
Exactly. I'm talking. Yes, exactly. I like what I do. Okay. I like the torture
keep saying
of what
it,
I do.
and I'll believe you.
No, I do love it.
You do.
And,
you do.
And having you here because you know so much and you're also thinking about this in a similar way. I just so appreciate you and all the work that you're doing. So Baratunde, thank you again.
Shira Lazar, thank you. Congrats on the launch of your show. I'm honored to be an early guest on the AI Download. Everybody like, subscribe, 5-star this joint, whatever platform it's on, be there and consume it again, and then just have it running on loop, in the background of your life.
Yeah, get an AI to do that.
That's what my clone will do. My clone will watch my show and up that view time.
There are services for that, I'm sure. Anyway. Yeah. Follow Baratunde everywhere at Baratunde Thurston. Of course, check out his series, Life with Machines, everywhere. You get your podcasts, of course, on YouTube too. All the links in the show notes and the description. A big thank you to Hivelighter for sponsoring today's show. Literally couldn't be here without a sponsor. And if you want to dive deeper, check out the AI Download Collection, where we've curated the top highlights from this episode's biggest AI stories. Literally, you click in and it shows you all the stories we covered, as well as our archive. So it's so easy. So many times you hear a story like, oh my God, that was really interesting. I want to share that. Well, you should share this episode, but you could also click through to read the story, etc. So click the Hivelighter link in our show notes to explore more. And if you enjoy this conversation, again, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, share it with your fellow AI curious friends, as Baratunde mentioned. See you next time on the AI Download.